Hello. Today, let me open this up. Today we're going to be talking about color in your edits, in your AMVs, in your anime music videos. We're going to be discussing color correction, color grading, how you should source and find footage, some useful tools, and a quick exercise to familiarize yourself with very surface level aspects of color theory. That's what we're going to be doing today. So, first things first, color correction. Color correction, I'll put a definition on screen, something like that. But it's essentially preparing or fixing footage so that you can just use it or color grade it going forward. So let's do some color correction. So here in After Effects, we have three scenes. We got Yuji sitting in the carriage. We got this scene again from the beginning of Jujutsu Kaisen, and we have Kobayashi sitting in bed. So let's go with this one first. So what we can do here, so really and truly for anime, you're not really going to be doing much color correcting in terms of like fixing or like matching different camera settings, because anime. But what you will something you can do, something you probably will have to do often, is fix or change the white balance in the scene so you can correct it and then color grade it later to achieve a particular mood. So we have our scene here. It's real orange, real warm. We want to make it more neutral or cooler. So what we're going to do first, we're going to go to window. I'm going to open Lumetri Scopes. Now, at some point you may have opened Lumetri Scopes by accident and you're like, what the fuck is this? Don't worry. This is a powerful tool. So, in the context of white balancing, we're gonna do just that. So, make an adjustment layer, press Ctrl Alt Y, then go to levels. Oh, if you can spell, we apply levels. Now, see, our scene is really warm. We want to neutralize this scene. You want to make it not too warm. You want to see the range of colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up here in levels, change the channel to red. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to take the gamma of red, this little point here. We're going to bring that down. And you see immediately we're seeing it's becoming more green and blue. We're letting more green and blue into the scene. Now, if I do this and we change it to parade instead of waveform, it will show us each separate channel, RGB. If I go to blue and I raise blue, suddenly it's becoming a lot less stylized and a lot more natural to what you would see the human eye, I guess. It neutralizes, it's not too warm, not too cool, which is great. And usually when you engage or do any when you white balance anime clips, after, you're gonna usually be left with something that is balanced but doesn't necessarily have the range that we want. So after you've mixed the channels, and this is a relatively easy case, sometimes it's going to be harder, sometimes it's going to be easier. Once you've done this, you can go back to RGB, and if you look here, we have all our values on the on the left side here of our histogram. If we bring this here and we have the graph change in this fashion to take up to have a higher range of values, we see it see a more dynamic looking image. All right. Now that we're here, a quick tidbit when you're doing this is that a problem that is pervasive is that when people do CC, they'll do sound like this. So if I close this here. I just add curves. If I can spell again, wow. I do this, alright, I do this. Now in the scene, because it's relatively dark, we're not actually getting it overexposed. In fact, we're crushing a little bit at the bottom here, but, or not actually not at all, but if I turn this on, and we boost it, just so I can really demonstrate. You see here, crushing. You see how these values are being lost? They're squishing at the top. That means we're actually losing detail at the extremes of our image. So you see in these white areas, in the bright areas, we're now losing detail. They're like, there's less detail on the highlights. Yeah, and that's bad. It looks like shit. Don't do that. Not good. You know, that's not what we want. We want a nice, balanced image, unless you made that deliberate choice for a stylized reason. But generally, in 99% of cases, you don't want to be crushing any values in your scene, really. That's one case example. Let's move on to the next. We got Yuji. He's standing. Oh, well, this is like a shot of the talisman, but he's getting confronted by our boy Gojo. Alright, now we're gonna do that again. And with this on, you can even see that, you know, there's less blues and there's more reds in this scene. So we already know what we're kind of getting into. So levels again on an adjustment layer. And this is a fairly basic way to do it. You can do it with curves as well, but that's when you get more of the hang of it, because curves allows you to actually do it at different gives you a little bit more control, but you'll figure it out. You're smart. I trust you. Whoever's watching this. Now, let's go to our reds and let's do the same process again. Go back to parade. Alright, look at that. Lots of red, some green, and very little blue. Let's change this again. Bring the reds down. So it matches. Ooh. And again, you know, you're not gonna get the. Remember, you are editing pre-existing footage, so it's gonna be a bit finicky. And you see in this situation here, bringing up the blue is gonna cause a lot of. You can see more. I pressed tilde, by the way, to do that. There's a lot of artifacts, alright? But for whatever reason, I don't really know. I should know. That's why I'm not a professional. But for some reason, bringing up values will cause a lot more compression than bring them down. So if we reset this and go back to red, alright, let's bring our reds down to where our blues are actually. And let's bring the green down to where the blues are. And now it is a more of a balanced image. Now if I bring everything back up, you'll see what I mean. And now you're gonna have to play with this a little till we find a nice sweet spot. I want to try that again. You know, it's not gonna work the first time. Case in point, what's going on right now. So let's bring this up. Again, we want to try and make it so that it's not dominant in any sort of color. As neutral as possible. We want to bring our blues up a little bit more, as much as we can get away with, to bring more range into the scene. Oh, okay. Now it's looking a little bit better. Let's not don't want to overdo it. Let's bring the reds down a little smidge. See what we can do there. It's looking a little bit green. And if you've never done this before, you might be wondering what's the point. Again, it gives you more control at later stages of the editing process, so that you can express yourself more. You can make more decisions about how, you know, your colors are going to look in your edit, because you're starting from a more neutral, more blank-ish state, and it won't be swayed in one way or the other. So you look at this on and then off, you know, we're getting more more neutral values in the scene. You know, you look at this. This is a drastic example in that, like, you know, you could tell these are white, but it doesn't even look white. And in some instances, you may even reveal colors that you wouldn't even have recognized, right? And that's sort of like what you see here. Something that's really important is that you make sure you click this button right here in your project window. You can either this or this, and set your depth to 16 bits per channel, so there's more information the After Effects can draw for in your images, in order to avoid stuff like banding or some effects looking weird, especially when you're doing color correction or grading. So if, like, for example, in extreme cases with really low quality footage, or if you haven't set your comp or project to 16 bits, is that you can, in very extreme cases, you can get banding, which is what, like this. You know, you'll see in a lot of edits or a lot of AMV, you'll see a lot of highlights, especially bright or dark areas being compressed like this. And it looks, unless a deliberate stylistic choice, looks very ugly in most circumstances. So now that we've done color correction, finally, I can say it again, let's move on to color grading. So let's go color corrected scene from Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, and I make another adjustment layer by pressing Ctrl Alt Y again. Remember them shortcuts. Alright, now because I want to make this like as accessible as possible, I'm going to use Lumetri Color, something that is in stock After Effects. Don't need any plugins for. Lumetri Color is a really comprehensive color grading effect, and you know, you can basically do anything with it. So we want it more vibrant. We make it more vibrant. Wow, look at that. Wow. But remember, never ever, I'm so serious, don't ever do this. Don't ever be crushing. You see how these crushing at the bottom? Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. Looks ugly as fuck. Looks disgusting. Don't do it. But yeah, you know, you can even raise the dynamic range. Me personally, I wouldn't do that. I think it's a bit too extreme, especially for this scene. And we might run into some compression if we boost, you know, to some noticeable compression if we boost it up this much. I'm gonna leave it curved as it is. You know, I'm not a particularly big fan of very overbearing or dramatic CCs in my own edits. So yeah, you can do that. You can do whatever you want. So like, you know, let's say you're going. In fact, so we saw the initial scene was really warm, right? So if you wanted to have if you wanted to take it from like a homely feeling to a cool and cold feeling, change the entire vibe of the scene, you can now do that. You can take. Oh, they don't have. Maybe I'm thinking of a different plugin, a different effect, but you can go here, you can add levels, and what you can actually do is you can use the blues or decrease the reds, and now you have a more sort of a cooler, colder scene. Yeah, maybe you can change the saturation a bit as well. After Effects, you done. All right, now you have a completely different vibe. And the reason that color correction is so important is that, look at this, right? Without the color correction on, we kind of have this kind of weird, just washed out image. It's not even cool, you know? And it's still really warm, not a desired effect, but that was cool. Got a cool image. And in fact, I'm gonna actually reduce what I did there, reduce the range, so that it just what I want it to look like. And then we've seen that sort of follows the direction of whatever edit I'm doing. Yeah, so it's just usually in the context of anime edits, it's kind of just, you can do on every scene. If you don't want to go through those hurdles or those extra steps, which is a bit lazy, but is what it is, and I understand. Sometimes you just apply it to overly warm or overly cool scenes like this one, in order to give yourself more control over the colors and have a more like homogeneous sort of colors going on your edit, you know, because you don't want massive differences, unless that's what you're going for. But generally, you don't want a massive difference in like tone in the edit you're making. Wow, what else is on the list? Color grading. And then obviously, when it comes to color grading, there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. You can add grain, you get your film grain of choice. You can have default, offset, add grain, or ignite film grain, whatever you want. Bow. You can even use a overlay if it's high quality enough. That's up to your discretion. Another cool tidbit is if you pay close attention. So in fact, this composition would be, so I press Control Y to open up to make a solid. Wow. But this composition is 1920 by 1080. And when it comes to this particular effect, that is the sort of white artifacts that you get on sort of old grainier stuff. If you want to do that, for example, I would make it 4K, 4Kizzy. So 3840, if I'm not mistaken. There we go. And then I would add fractal noise. Right. Oh, let's turn that off real quick. All right. Get our fractal noise. And like, oh, what are you doing? Then you turn up the contrast. Turn down the brightness a lot. All right. We're getting little sort of artifacts on the screen. You turn it down even more. You don't want it to be overbearing or too much. Unless that's what you're going for. We want it to be relatively subtle. Turn up the complexity as well. So we kind of just have little dots here. And in order to animate them, just go to you could keyframe evolution manually across the duration of your edit, or you could expression, alt click, stopwatch, time, asterisk, and then you add some sort of multiplier. So the multiplier will multiply to change over time. So let's say 14, and then now it's moving. It's evolving ever so slowly. And a fast way to do this, and I guess what we want to do in this instance, is actually add this to our seed. So let's do that here. Bow, and look at that, changes like film. And yeah, so you get something like this. And then because in most cases you don't want it to be too big, press Control Alt Shift and H to fit it to the bounds of your composition. And now you have a relatively small, constantly changing grain, film white artifacts. And to sort of sell us a bit more, we're gonna add posterize time. Set that to like 6. Maybe reduce the brightness even more to have less of them on screen, and then set to add. And what that will do, and I want to put this above actually, our CC. This is the CC, color correction. Go get that straight. And this is our color grade, CG. Yeah, like that, bow. And now we have a little grain on top as well. Great. That's sort of like the basics of whatever you want to do. Again, especially because it's neutral as well, we can take this in any direction we want because we color corrected our footage. Want to go a little bit, make it look a little bit trippy. All right, let's reset this. Let's go to our greens. Let's boost a little bit, and then let's take everything else down. Now we're looking at a little bit of a glitchy vibe glitch edit, as some might say. And that's how we achieve this aesthetic as well. It kind of just gives you more control over the values in the scene. Play around with it. I'm sure you'll find some crazy results depending on what you want to do. Okay, let's see what else is there. Now, when it comes to quality, something that's really important, really important. Please, for the love of God, do not download clips from YouTube, Twitter, Insta. Don't Sakaboru, you lazy fucks. Don't do that, because you're not going to be able to. Because the problem is, when you do that, you will not have the information in your scene to be able to do something like this. You're going to be heavily compressed and heavily limited in what you'll be able to do. So instead, what you're going to do is you're going to go to nya.si, like in that one Netflix show, and just type in whatever show you want. Remember, if you're having trouble finding if you're actually having trouble finding the show, what you can do in lots of instances is that it will actually have just the Japanese name, and if we colloquially refer to it as something else, like I don't know, in English and like the anime community, you call it like I don't know, like Konosuba. sometimes it won't come up, so you have to actually type in Konosuba and then go to Mao and type in the full name, Konosubarashi, blah 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 blah, and then put that into Nyo, and then you'll actually find results for it. You know, there've been instances where people are like, "Oh, I can't find it." That's what you do. All right, and you want to obviously, now depending on what you're doing, like for HC, I'll just sort by CDs and then download the fastest thing. For actual like big edit, I'll actually sort by size and then find the most rawest rip of the Blu-ray. And if you want to find exclusively Blu-rays, you can add BD to the end of that search. No gang stuff. That stands for Blu-ray DVD. You don't condone any of that violent stuff. And then you'll actually only come up with Blu-ray rips of said show, which allows you to have a higher quality, you know? And that's what we want, high quality stuff. This 90 gigs. Download that, you know, use your discretion. 90 gigs, that's okay. I have a second hard drive, but if you're, you know, running tight on space, maybe something in the 20 gig range is something for you, you know? Just don't, I swear to God, don't be bro, don't download anything from Sakura Boru. Someone needs to slap your head. I'm so serious. You're a waste man if you do that. I can't lie. Anyway, that's that. Quality. Oh, another helpful tidbit is that, and results with this may vary. It's a bit circumstantial. For some people, it's been really beneficial, and for other people, is, you know, you see a marginal improvement. If I go here, for example, so different media players can actually apply effects to your colors. I know VLC is notorious for that. So using VLC, you won't actually get an accurate representation of what your colors will look like when your edit is actually over, or when you rendered it. And in that instance, and because of that, you're not gonna it's not gonna be accurate, and you want it to be accurate when you're previewing stuff or you're like looking through footage. So in most cases, because like MPC is the most intuitive and convenient UI and user experience, I use that. When I'm actually looking at footage properly, I use a program called DJV, and it's like a professional software that is used to review footage, and it's really cool because it's, you know, it's raw. It doesn't tamper any of your footage, and allows you to view your colors and your footage more accurately. So I'll leave a download for that in the description. And I don't have VLC because fuck that program. But if I look at, do I even have any anime edits on my computer? If you look at this episode of Bocchi the Rock, you can open it with MPC. That's what we get. All right, we open it with, okay, and we choose another app, DJV. Open it. We're gonna get a different UI, and we'll also, when it decides to open, we're gonna get very much more accurate representation of colors. You know, nothing will be changed. I guess it'll be marginal, especially because of like compression and stuff. You won't be able to tell the difference, but like, peep it. You know, anytime you're like, just, you don't have to do this all the time, but when you've rendered your edit and you're about to compress it or handbrake it or media encode it, just check it real quick, see if you like what you're seeing, because this is what it actually looks like. There's a quick tidbit there. Let's see. Let's check the list. What else is there? Pick from movie scenes. Oh, also, if the idea of what different colors mean or represent, if when I was saying cool or warm, was sort of like, if you didn't really understand what I meant in terms of it like serving a theme, that like warm colors mean that like it's more nostalgic or sentimental or homely, or even more passionate in some cases, and like cold, cool colors, you know, it's more somber, a bit unhappy, distant, cold, you know. If you don't really understand or resonate with what I'm saying in that instance, a quick, cool exercise in order to really get a feel for colors is to do this. So what you want to do is you want to open Photoshop. I have Photoshop already here. You want to go to a website called Evan E. Richards, and that is like has an index of a bunch of different movie screenshots from movies. And if you take a movie that you've already seen, because these are professional colorists, take a movie you've already seen and you have You know how you felt during certain scenes? You can actually go here to index, search for said movie. I did the Grand Budapest Hotel. Because that, you know, Wes Anderson movies have a real obvious use of color. You know, you have these screenshots in very high quality, and you can use that as a reference. But in this instance, I've taken 3 screenshots, and you know, just think back to when you watch these specific scenes, or you can do this with any screenshots, by the way. It doesn't have to be from our website. That's a good resource. Think back, and then you're gonna pick 5 colors, and it will kind of show you what colors will be used to deliver different moods, you know. So one, I want to make a background, so I click solid. And remember, when you're doing anything with color, you want to make sure that you're using gray. And the reason you want to do gray is because like different colors next to different brightness backgrounds look completely different. So you want it to be as neutral as possible. So I do that, I do this, we have a completely gray background, a neutral gray. All right, you don't want a bright one because it will affect the way that you perceive the same color. In fact, just as an example, if I get a brush and I do this, right? If I have this yellow here, this looks completely different here than it does here, all right? Again, that's really important. So that doesn't really apply in the case of AMVs, but just in general, keep that in mind. So let's say I wanted to, so this exercise I'm talking about, so you pick a color from here, plop it down, pick another, plop it down, pick another, plop it down, etc., etc. And you will get an overall vibe. And this will show you the type of colors used to achieve said mood in the scene. So if memory serves me correct, this is like a sad, solitary scene. You can tell by the composition and just generally what's going on. But these colors, these cool colors, cool and dark colors, contribute to said somber and sad tone. You know, you can do that for, so what I'm doing actually, if you don't know, I'm pressing Alt, I'm left clicking, and that will pick a color. And I'm pressing B, this particular brush, and I'm just clicking, and that will put a splotch down, you know. And if you want to pick tones, and it's really, really helpful if you're like new to this, because it will really show you how deliberate and distinct colors are actually in movies and scenes, how deliberate of choices they are because of how distinct they are and what type of moods they set. You got lots of red in this one, reds and purples. Red usually signifies danger or intensity, and that's why we see a wash in the scene. It's almost entirely red, so much so because of the indirect lighting. But yeah, that's kind of it. It's kind of quick tidbit on color. There's a lot, and again, this is like this is more foundational knowledge. Again, specific, like think of it like you're the director. When you make an edit or anything, not just the AMV, you're the director. This is kind of just serves you to give you the tools to sort of set things up so you can make your own deliberate choices as to how you want things to look. Yeah, that's kind of it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too long. Yeah.